Hello, my name is Desmond Lynch. I am 27 years old and I'm a filmmaker. I made a short film called Goodnight, Midnight and I want to talk about it. Development. So in 2023, I made my first proper short film, Showtime. I remember making that film. I really wanted to make another film called God's Country, and I was going to do it, but the money and resources I would need to make God's Country were pretty staggering at the time. And I also had these ideas for other stories that I could make that were cheaper and easier to make. So I thought it would be best to make those films first and then save God's Country for someday down the line. The idea of Goodnight Midnight really came to me because I'm kind of fascinated by prostitution and the weird aspects that go along with it. The creepiness, the awkwardness, the loneliness, stuff like that. The idea of it really made me uncomfortable, which is what compelled me to explore that topic, especially in this strange world we live in where stuff like watching porn is relatively normalized, whereas visiting a prostitute is taboo, which in my opinion is kind of weird, which again made me want to explore this topic. The idea of the film is that we follow this escort that goes by the name of Midnight. She's this very charming, eccentric person, and the film would basically follow her as she encounters a client who goes by the name John. I call him John because a lot of guys who visit prostitutes give fake names, like John or something like that. Midnight specifically is an independent high-class escort, so she's not a victim of trafficking or grooming or poverty. She just chose this life because she found it more appealing than a regular 9 to 5 job. The first few drafts revolved around Midnight encountering this guy who went by the name of John. This was John's first encounter for prostitutes, so he's quite nervous. The main thing I wanted to convey in the story is how clinical and transactional the encounter is and how weird it is when you really think about it. I heightened that by making Midnight more eccentric and John being more timid and socially awkward, because for him, this is a big deal, but for her, it's her job, so nothing really phases her. Nothing really happened in the first few drafts. It was really just two people having a conversation. Upon rereading, I didn't find that interesting, so I thought I would add a bit of drama to the story by having John be a married man. He gets exposed and tries to back out of it, but Midnight pressures him to go through with it, which in turn leads to a very nasty confrontation after the transaction is complete. John makes matters more complicated by revealing that his wife had a stroke 5 years before the film, so he hasn't been physically intimate with anyone in a long time, and he's not doing too well mentally, which in turn makes you feel sorry for him. You don't necessarily approve, but you understand where he's coming from. So I wrote about 3 to 4 different drafts of the script, and after that I was happy enough to make the film, as it conveyed everything I wanted to, namely the strange, weird culture of being an escort, how awkward an encounter for a prostitute really would be, the anxieties of working in that type of situation, needing money, having to worry about your looks constantly, trying to keep clients, trying to get people to come back, etc. And also the loneliness of it, the loneliness of some of the clients who crave love but can't find it, so they settle for this. That's what I wanted to explore. Pre-production. So I contacted basically every acting agency in Ireland for the film, both north and south of the border. I believe I got something like 30 to 40 men auditioning for John and only 18 women for Midnight. I don't think I got many for Midnight because I assumed people thought that the role was going to be minimal or cliche or whatever, so they didn't understand the type of character I was looking for. I'm going to be honest, I hate the auditioning process. I find it a very awkward experience for both myself and actors because I'm looking for a very specific thing and these people are looking for a job, so it's just awkward, especially since I'm corresponding with them by myself, so I was constantly emailing people back and forth. Just like Showtime, I had people send me self-tapes. Due to the nature of the script, I felt I couldn't really send outside because if I send you like 2 minutes of the script, it just reads as the most insane thing ever. So I basically sent out the entire script so everyone could read it, understand what it's about, what I'm going for, and then I told the actors to pick a page or two that they liked, read that, and then that's your audition. I had to watch about 50 to 60 different self-tapes. I made notes on each tape so I had reference material. I knew which tapes I liked, which tapes I didn't. I narrowed down my choices, and then I rewatched the tapes, and then I made my decision. I went with Mike Walsh for John. I had worked with Mike before on a short film that I did sound for, so I offered him a chance to audition. I liked his audition, so he got the role. For Midnight, I went with Melissa Kipierski as I felt she fit the vibe and understood the character. I would do a few rehearsals with the actors ahead of the production via Zoom, as we were all based in different places across the island. So when we got to production, all we really had to do was work out blocking. In regards to crew, I just decided to work with people that I knew and had worked with previously. I brought on Thomas Alone as director of photography. That's basically a fancy name for a camera operator. His partner Molly was the camera assistant, Lucy Reed as art director, Katie Ireland as costume designer, and then Jarlath Burns as assistant director. I was making this film on a cheap, so I thought it was a good idea for me to both direct the film and do sound recording for the film. It's not uncommon for directors to do two jobs in a film. For example, Quentin Tarantino was both director and cameraman for Death Proof. And of course, we had Olivia as producer, so she helped organize the film. In regards to this production, I wanted to try to get a 50-50 split of gender on the crew. Normally, I don't really care about this. I always try to approach crewing as getting the best person for the job, regardless of race, gender, sexuality, or anything like that. But given the nature of this film and the kind of scenes that Melissa has to do, I felt for her comfort that having a set not completely dominated by men was the best way to go. I think it's nice having a balance as it keeps vibes on the set cool and comfortable. We shot the film on a red Komodo using prime lenses, namely 25mm lens and an 18mm lens that we borrowed from friend and fellow filmmaker Thomas Pollock. I own all my sound gear, so that saved money on rentals. Most of our money went to securing a location. I believe we just rented out a week flat on Airbnb. A lot of our money went to costumes for both Mike and Melissa. So for Katie, I wrote up a document with reference materials of the kind of clothes I wanted the characters to wear. We also liaised with Melissa as well to see what she was comfortable wearing for the film. After that, I left it to Katie to contact Mike and Melissa to sort out clothes sizes and stuff like that. Art direction-wise, we gave small amounts to Lucy. There wasn't much we could do because it was such a small space. The main priority was to really just to make this one bedroom look nice for filming. Lucy also gathered props, so stuff like makeup, wine bottles, glasses, condoms, lube, card machine, stuff like that, which we needed for the film. She got it. In regards to camera, we just mostly relied on favors from fellow filmmakers. Tom ended up borrowing a lot of lights and gear from friends. I owned a few LED lights, so we considered using them for a while as well. In indie filmmaking, specifically when you're on a low budget, you're really dependent on the kindness of friends, colleagues, and strangers to help make things happen. So it's good to pay those favors back and appreciate the help you get. I storyboarded everything, started out drawing out shots with pen and paper. Then I digitized them by drawing them up on a Word document. For this film, I did something special. I made a short animatic, nothing fancy, just a few stick figures on a free website, to basically make the shots that I wanted to convey the blocking and other things. I showed that to Tom before production, so he understood what we were doing. The day before production, we all visited the flat that we were filming in. It was smaller than expected. We did some lighting tests. Lucy helped black out the windows and then sorted out the set decoration, basically changing the entire look of the bedroom from this boring grey room to something a lot warmer. Katie did some costume tests. We got that sorted out early on, so she had time to make any late changes that were required. We discovered that we really didn't need much lights. Tom said that all we needed to light the room was 2 lamps, therefore no need to use LEDs that I brought. In regards to the scenes in the bathroom and the hallway, Tom said that we could use the natural ceiling lights as the harsh light would contrast nicely with the scenes in the bedroom, which were dimmer and softer. The big thing was that upon seeing the hallway, I decided I could do a one-shot dynamic take of the scene where John tries to flee the flat, but Midnight stops him. The good thing with planning is that you're so prepared that you can accommodate to any changes that you may need to make on the day, which we did. After the tests, I spent some time with the actors running through rehearsals and blocking. The location we had wasn't great. It was small, claustrophobic, and too warm. Once we got the blocking figured out, that was us ready for the production, which we would do the next day. Before we move on, I want to make note that I initially wanted to make Goodnight Midnight for less money than I made for Showtime, so I cut corners. One of them being I wanted to shoot the entire film in one day. Now, normally, depending on the script, you could shoot something like 3 to 6 pages on the average shooting day, but our script was 15 pages long, so it was a lot. I checked in with the cast and crew to see if they were all okay with this ahead of production. They were all fine with it, so with that in mind, we all went ahead and shot the film in one day. Production. The production proved to be more difficult than anticipated. We had several problems with the location, which limited us and even added some extra issues to the budget. We worked a pretty intense day, something like 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., so it was a very exhausting day for everyone involved. The good thing is we had planned ahead with blocking and lighting, so we knew what we were doing. In pre-production, we decided to shoot the entire thing handheld, so no tripods or rigs because we just didn't have time to set them up, and doing everything handheld was easier for turnovers and allowed us to navigate the limited space more efficiently. We shot quite a lot. I think we did something like 81 slates throughout the day, averaging 2 to 3 takes each. The shoot was tough because of the long hours. The heat of the room we were shooting in made everyone, including myself, quite uncomfortable. Physically and mentally, I was exhausted by recording both sound and directing at the same time. Despite these challenges, I believe we got some pretty solid performances throughout the production. In regards to the shots, we basically got everything I wanted from the storyboards and shot list, alongside some improvised shots such as the close-up of a used condom and a mastered dynamic 2 shot in the hallway. Sound-wise, the film went okay, since it was just me doing sound. I relied on the boom only, as I just didn't have the time to set up lavs on the actors. So the entire thing was just recorded entirely on the boom mic. The only issues we really faced in regard to sound was during the day we could hear background noise of the busy road outside, and of course the occasional plane overhead. Outside of that, it was fine. Costume-wise, it went pretty well, no major issues. Art department-wise, the main priority was continuity alongside maintaining the property to make sure nothing was damaged or got dirtied. We scheduled in 2 breaks during the long day. We kept to a pretty strict schedule as well, but even so, we finished an hour over because, again, there was just too much and we needed to gather. The main problem was the location and the sheer amount of stuff that we had to gather. We gathered, I'd say, well over 2 terabytes of footage in one day, which for a short film is pretty crazy. Despite the many difficulties throughout the shoot, I think the team did a great job. Post-production. The editing process for this was a bit of a nightmare. As mentioned, we shot well over 2 terabytes of footage for this film. Originally, I had bought a 2 terabyte portable hard drive for data wrangling, the same type of drive I used for Showtime. However, we shot over 2 terabytes, so the drive just wasn't suitable for backups. So I had to buy another hard drive that was 5 terabytes large, which of course took up a chunk out of the budget, alongside additional stuff like issues with the location and sorting out accommodation, etc. The edit itself was difficult mainly because the production was so difficult that for a while I just lost interest in the project itself. I was editing it myself, so the workload at that time in my life was a bit too intense, so I had to take a break from the project. However, I eventually got back to it and managed to get the edit done. The main issues we had was stuff like eyeline and blocking, continuity being messed up in a few takes, which was no one's fault. Again, we were working on an extremely long day, so things like that will happen due to fatigue. I started off watching the dailies, which are all the takes that we shot. I would catalog them, mark out which takes were good, which were bad, any problems in certain takes, and what I can use from each take. So it gave me a reference guide for the edit, which was very handy, especially since I had to take a break from the project. I managed to make a rough cut, a lot of footage we didn't even use. I think initially I shaved off about 4 minutes, as it was just back and forth dialogue between the two that was more character stuff but didn't necessarily advance the plot. I showed the rough cut to my friend Mercer Hughes, who was also the editor for Showtime. He advised that a few scenes should be cut to save time and improve the story. I followed his advice and I think it worked out very well. I think the original film was something like 18 or so minutes, but we got it down to just under 15 minutes. The grade proved a bit of a challenge because Tom, the DOP, was originally going to do the color grade during the edit, but he took a hiatus from filmmaking for a while, so I had to get someone else, which proved challenging because I had to find someone who had experience editing red cameras that operated in the indie scene. Fortunately, I was able to find a guy called Guillermo Robles. I gave him the files alongside the cinematography references, which dictated the exact color I wanted for the film, alongside some stills that Tom was able to conjure up before he took his break from filmmaking. We went through about 4 to 5 different drafts of the color grade until I got exactly what I wanted. Sound-wise, we had Eugenus Caprice return as post-sound mixer/dialogue editor. He cleaned up the sound, a process which took a while because he was doing this project during his spare time he got off from his 9-to-5 job. The main problem for Eugenus was that I had forgotten to include room tone in the edit, because I'm a fucking idiot. So he had to fix that. Plus, we had issues getting rid of certain on-set sound effects, cutting out off-screen, off-axis dialogue for certain pieces of coverage as well. Despite these challenges, Eugenus did a great job and the film sounds really good. We had a guy called Luke Kavanagh cover the music. The film only has music in the beginning and end. What I wanted was something elegant and melancholic. So we had a few songs made. I take particular inspiration from the film's In the Mood for Love for music, so we did that. Luke made a few drafts of the songs and I used them in the edit. When all this was said and done, we finished the film. Conclusion. The film process for this was very difficult, again, just due to the hours and location. The difficulties in post as well left a bad taste in my mouth. So for a long time, I didn't like the film due to the negative experience making it, especially since it cost a lot more than I initially intended. So we went over budget on what was supposed to be a cheap film. However, as time has gone on, I've grown to appreciate the film for how it portrays the subject matter, as well as the awkward/uncomfortable vibe which I wanted to convey. What's next? I will continue making the occasional audio drama. The priority for this year is getting money gathered for a feature film I plan on shooting in January 2027. Goodnight Midnight is now available online for all to watch. My other short film, Trespass, will also be released later on this year. Thank you all for listening, and goodbye.